Welcome, everyone. We're the Arts Foundation for Tucson and Southern Arizona. I'm Alex Jimenez, Grants Coordinator. And on the webinar today, we also have Gabriela Munoz, Grants Manager, and Ami Robles, our Communications Associate, who is helping us record.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Okay. We support creatives who bring art to life with funding, public art, promotion, and advocacy. And today we are here to complete the Section 504 Self-Evaluation Workbook. And today we have some materials for the webinar. You should have received links in your confirmation email, but Gabriela will be posting them again in the chat. So go ahead and download what you need to so we can work on them together. We have 3 documents: the 504 workbook, which is an editable PDF workbook we will be going through together; the self-evaluation notes document, which is a companion document that grantee organizations will be creating today; and then the Design for Accessibility Handbook, which is a handbook on accessibility in the arts. It's summarized in different parts during this webinar, and it's really a great resource and a sort of a reference. So to talk about each thing in more detail, the Section 504 Self-Evaluation Workbook is a tool to help you evaluate your programs, activities, and facilities. It can be utilized to satisfy a portion of the self-evaluation requirements. You must maintain a file of information gathered during this process and keep it for a 3-year period. Any highlighted information that I'll be sharing on my document is to let you guys know that it needs to be completed in the notes document, which I will go over in one moment. So now I'm going to walk you through how to open and save the editable PDF document, because not everyone has Acrobat Reader, which they can work from. And this document actually this PDF can be opened and closed within a internet browser. So on the National Endowment for the Arts website, we have the Section 504 Evaluation Workbook. We're going to click the link. It'll open it up in your browser. Now it's editable, so you can go to where the questions are, and you can actually fill in yes, no, and it will save what you select. Once you start editing it, if you need to, save it for later, you just will download it, and you click the download with your changes. I'm going to save this to my webinar folder. And we would like you to title your 504 workbook document 504 Self-Evaluation Workbook and the name of your organization. And this will be a PDF. And once it's saved, when you open it up again, it'll open up in the browser just like this with everything filled in how you saved it. So for now, go ahead and keep working on it in the browser. And when you're ready, you can save it how I showed you. Okay. The next document is the 504 Self-Evaluation Notes document. And you are going to create this right now. So you're going to create a blank document that will serve as your companion notes document as we go through the workbook. Questions in the workbook will direct you to add more information that will go into this notes section. And I will walk you through that right now. And then this notes document, along with the workbook, they will satisfy the self-evaluation requirements and will be due with the final report. I will go over that one more time. in a moment here. So we're going to open up a blank document. This could be a Google document as well if you don't have Microsoft Word. So in my Word document, I am going to title this my 504 Self-Evaluation Notes Document. The name of your organization. And actually, I would put the year that you're doing this. Name of your organization. And then your section 504 coordinator. Designate someone, probably who's attending is going to be that person designated. If you're the only person, staff person in your organization, you're the de facto 504 coordinator. Congratulations. Persons. And I would recommend just starting with some simple headers to organize your information. As we go through, there are 4 sections. I will go over those momentarily. So there's section 1, section 2, section 3, and section 4. Oops. Okay, and then you're going to save this. As the 504 self-evaluation notes, and then the name of your organization. And it's going to be a Word file, most likely. I'm going to save that where I have my other one. 504 self-evaluation notes and the name of your organization. Great. And then you're all good. And you're going to keep this document open at the same time that you have the PDF we just opened in the browser. You're going to be going back and forth between the two during this webinar. So just to summarize what we just did, both of these documents you will submit for final report by January 15th. The first one is the self-evaluation workbook. That's the PDF that you're editing in a browser or with Adobe Reader. We'll fill that out today during the webinar, and not all questions will be applicable, and you can leave some blank. Save and upload with final report materials via Submittable, and you will keep it on file for 3 years. The second one was the Word document we just opened. It's going to be a .docx document, and we're going to be adding to it during our webinar, and you will finish it on your own because there are things you will have to add to it later that will take more time. It will require a signature of the designated 504 coordinator, and you will save and upload with the final report materials via Submittable, and you'll keep it on file for 3 years. Okay, and the last thing is the Design for Accessibility Handbook. This is a reference handbook with detailed information on compliance with accessibility laws for the arts. It has ideas on ways to create accessibility for the various types of art and programming. It has technical details of architectural accessibility. And this is a really great resource to keep on hand when considering how your organization can become accessible. It has robust resources after each section and lots of ideas. So I highly recommend looking through it on your own. We won't be looking through it today. Okay, what are the goals of our webinar? I just want to remind everyone that this is not a pass or fail exercise. While many of your responses in the workbook might be no, this is just the beginning of your organization's journey towards becoming more accessible. And the goal is to have a better understanding of accessibility within your organization's programs, activities, and facilities. And you're starting that journey today. Organizations will have another goal is that grantees will have filled out the 504 self-evaluation workbook to the best of their ability, fulfilling that requirement, and that you will have started on a self-evaluation notes document that contains more detailed information requested in the workbook that will be completed on your own later. So why are we all here today? Why are we doing all this work? Accessibility matters because according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, almost half of American Indian and Alaska Natives identify as having a disability, and 31% and 30% of Hispanic and Black communities identify as having a disability. So these figures show that the chances that your organization is going to encounter and work with participants with a disability is very high. And if your organization wants to reach BIPOC communities, they must consider the accessibility of their programs. And part of also why we're here is that there are several key pieces of disability legislation that govern how accessible programs and organizations have to be who are receiving federal dollars. The Architectural Barriers Act of 1968, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which includes Section 504, which is what sort of rules how people operate their organizations. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. And if you want more information, you can find more at the beginning of the workbook and also in Design for Accessibility. And rather than just viewing this exercise as a way to fulfill a requirement, it's best that we consider how disability is a part of equity. And it should be included in your overall strategies for improving equity within your organization. Accessibility is an organizational asset. Disability is a vital and often overlooked part of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And disability provides a unique perspective in artistic creation, the disability arts. And ultimately, it opens up your work to new audiences. So we're starting that journey today together. Very excited. These are the lists of disabilities considered throughout the workbook. What it's referring to is this list. And, oh, we already went through that, sorry. Okay, workbook sections. As I mentioned before, there are 4 sections. The first one's do you qualify? Second section has 3 parts to it, aimed at taking a comprehensive look at ways your organization has accessibility embedded in its administrative practices. Section 3 is about accessibility within your programs. And section 4 is about architectural accessibility. Section 1, do you qualify? Now, the format of today's webinar is I'll be going between my slides and then the editable PDF, and then going through and reading each question as you read along in your PDF. of questions. And so I'm going to prompt you all to open your workbook to page 6, which is page 7 of the PDF. Okay. Section 1, do you qualify? This is just a set of questions of whether you're subject to 504 regulations. The first one is basically asking, are you applying for or have already received an arts endowment grant? If so, you automatically, yes, are subject to 504 regulations. For some of you, you haven't directly applied to the arts endowment, so it'd be no. And then you go on. Does your organization, see here, receive any funds from other federal agencies or state arts agencies? So this would be like the Arizona Commission on the Arts. They're a state arts agency. In just one moment, I'm going to open up the document I have already saved that has highlighted information that you all can see. One moment, sorry. Here we go. Excellent. Now you can see I have some highlighted components, and throughout this document, you're going to see things in yellow, and that's a prompt that you need to write additional information in the Word document that you created. So that's why you'll be bouncing between both. But most likely, I would say just keep note of the question and write that in the document and go back and fill it out later. So you probably won't have time to complete your entire notes document at the same time as you're answering these questions. So if you get money from, say, the Arizona Commission on Arts, you put yes, and then in the notes document, which is a separate document, you're going to list each project, grant, or contract through which you receive federal or state money. If you don't, then is your organization supported by a local or state government agency that receives federal funds? And if this would be where everyone would put yes, because the Arts Foundation for Tucson and Southern Arizona falls under a local arts agency. And list any projects that are supported with this agency's funds. So whatever projects this ARPA grant has been supporting, put those in a list in your notes document. And then, do you have a copy of the 504 regulations from each federal agency funding your organization? Yes, you do, because Gabriela is going to put the link in the chat for the 504 regulations, and just bookmark that page. It's a website, not a document. And we just finished section 1. Hooray. Let's go to section 2. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. And section 2, administrative question. It has 3 sections. To it, self-evaluation, employment, part B, and part C is notice. And before we get into the subsections, I'm going to share with you this slide, the 5 key requirements to achieve accessibility. Keep these requirements in mind as we go through these sections. We'll revisit some of these with specifics about sort of the best practices to achieve the requirement. So firstly, do not discriminate against individuals with disabilities. 2, provide individuals with disabilities with effective communication mechanisms and an equal opportunity to benefit from programs, activities, goods, and services. 3, remove barriers to existing facilities and assure that new construction, renovations, and alterations meet or exceed applicable federal accessibility standards. 4, review and modify policies, procedures, and practices to prevent discrimination. 5, provide individuals with equal employment opportunities. And I also just wanted to say that questions will be answered after each section. I did not leave space for questions after section 1. We'll just wait till section 2, and we can answer questions there. Gabriela is monitoring the chat as well to answer anything that can be answered fairly quickly. So part A, self-evaluation. This is subsection section 2. So going back to that key requirements, do not discriminate against individuals with disabilities. You do this by making accessibility and non-discrimination an integral and routine part of day-to-day operations. And to do that, you include non-discrimination clauses in all communication that interfaces with the public, employees, employee benefit agreements, and professional associations. The best practice is to apply accessibility laws to all functions. Performances, exhibits, conferences, panel meetings, grant reviews, fundraisers, special events, and staff gatherings, no matter where conducted. So even if you're renting a room at a rec center. 4, this is one of the key requirements. Review and modify policies, procedures, and practices to prevent discrimination. And we're going to continue to revisit this slide often because the terms policies, procedures, and practices comes up a lot in the workbook. And what they mean by this is that policies are things like eligibility criteria, employment guidelines, admissions and ticketing rules, and fee structures. Procedures are the planned actions by which those policies are implemented, and practices are the routine ways in which the policies and procedures are carried out on a day-to-day basis. And this is kind of like the flow of how a program and administration kind of like work together within an organization. And it's best whenever you're doing anything new to start with the policy question, does this provide equal access for everyone? Okay, now we're going to go back to the workbook and open it to page 8, which is page 9 of the PDF. Okay, so we are in section 2, part A, self-evaluation. And I'm going to go through each question. Number 1, has your organization conducted a 504 self-evaluation? Yes, you're doing it right now. 2, has a staff member been appointed as your organization's 504 coordinator? Yes, you will do that today. 3, have you undertaken to identify the disabled population organizations representing disabled people in the area you serve? 4, and I'm going to go ahead and let you guys answer these per your organization within your own document. And just remind everyone once again, this is not pass or fail. Answering no, you're not going to get in trouble or anything. It's just an assessment and of where you're at and where you're starting from, and there's many more possibilities for where you can go. Number 4, does your state or local arts commission agency or arts service organization have an advisory committee that may assist you in evaluating your policies, programs, and other activities? Yes, actually. If we go to the Arizona Commission on the Arts, oopsies. Oh, that's not it. Gabriela is going to put in the chat a link to the Arizona Commission on the Arts accessibility page, which I thought I had open. And it's, oh, here we go. Here we go. This is it. Their accessibility page is really great. They have a long list of local resources. Should after this webinar, you want to work more on accessibility, these are organizations within Arizona who could help with that. There's national and regional resources, publications, website development, so making your websites more accessible. And then like your museums and facilities, theater, performing arts, a lot of really great resources, probably some of the same ones that are in the Design for Accessibility handbook. So go ahead and save that link for future reference if you need it. All right. Number 5, back to the workbook. Do you have any disabled staff members who would be willing to serve on advisory committees for arts organizations or as consultants in their areas of expertise? 6, have you discussed overall architectural and program accessibility with your disabled employees, and are they participating in this survey? 7, if any structural accommodations are required, have you prepared a transition plan? 8, have you evaluated your policies and practices? And this is a reference back to that slide we saw about what policies and practices are within your organization. 10, have you completed a signed self-evaluation form on file? You will at the end of this webinar. Does it contain a list of, now go ahead and write each of these things, the advisory committee, a description of areas exams identified, and a description of proposed modifications. These would be areas you would fill out later in your notes Word document. So for those who may have missed it, you should have both this workable PDF and then create a blank Word document that you are adding things to as we go through the workbook. 2 separate things, a PDF and a Word document that will get uploaded later by January 15th. 11, have you established a grievance procedure to negotiate complaints with disabled people? All right, that concludes Section A. Now we are on to Section B,
Sorry.
employment.
Sorry, could you slow down just a tiny bit?
Yes.
We also want to just remind everyone, so we fully anticipate that, this is really a session to get you through the questions and the workbook so that you have a moment to ask questions if you have them. Your notes document, the Word document that you'll use to provide all of this like supplemental kind of info that Alex has highlighted in the PDF. You won't be able to complete that at the end of the session. We will also share with you, we will send the PDF that has the highlights, and we'll share a copy of this PowerPoint presentation. If you have questions, please feel free to continue putting them on the chat, and because it is, we can slow down a little bit, but it is a very lengthy document, just as an FYI.
Yeah, we are like right on time right now for what we need to get accomplished in the next half hour before we have a break. So it's okay as Gabriela said. Thank you, Gabriela, for reminding everyone that you will have to adjust, come back and probably fill in and add to both the workbook if you decided to skip some questions, and then the notes document, definitely, because you'll need to add information to that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my slideshow because I have some information to share. So this is part B, employment. There are 8 questions that ask how accessible the employment process is for disabled applicants. And just to go back to those key requirements, provide individuals with equal employment opportunities. And the best practice is to have non-discriminatory employment procedures. And what that means is like making your recruitment and job applications accessible, having large print or braille applications or accessible online applications, advertising job openings in multiple media such as internet or radio. And in this workbook, it'll reference reasonable accommodations. And that's kind of a theme throughout sort of accessibility, because not all organizations can make all modifications. So it's, what's reasonable. And those would be making your facilities usable and accessible for an individual with disability, restructuring a job, modifying a work schedule, acquiring or modifying equipment, providing qualified readers or interpreters, or appropriately modifying examinations, training, or other programs. Reasonable accommodation also may include reassigning a current employee to another position if they're qualified, if it's not working out at their current one with modifications. However, there is no obligation to find a position for an applicant who is not qualified for the position sought. So going back to the policies, procedures, and practices, just thinking about how those all work together within your employment procedures. Okay, we're going to go back to the workbook, page 10, which is page 11 of the PDF. We are in section 2, part B, employment. Number 1, does your organization make its job application process and public notices of employment accessible to people with various disabilities? 2, does your method of recruiting employees use appropriate communications for hearing impaired, visually impaired, and speech impaired people? 3, both Section 504 and Title I of the ADA prohibit the use of employment tests and other selection criteria that can screen out individuals with disabilities unless the employer can demonstrate certain designating factors. In addition, the ADA generally prohibits medical examinations and inquiries about the nature or severity of a disability. Are your policies in compliance with these regulations? Number 4, do recruitment materials contain a non-discrimination policy? And note that a non-discrimination policy should state that the organization does not discriminate on the basis of disability in admissions or access to or employment in its programs and activities. 5, have you any employees, panelists, or board members with disabilities at present? If yes, list those positions, and those highlight areas go into the Word document. 6, have you employed any disabled people within the past 5 years? If yes, list those positions. 7, If you have had disabled employees, have you made reasonable accommodations, that is, modifications to your facilities or to the job structure to accommodate the employees? Either answer requires additional information in the notes document. 8. Do your employment policies and practices discriminate against disabled people in any of the following areas? Recruitment, hiring, promotion, termination, and rehiring. C, rates of pay or compensation. D, job classifications. E, sick leave and other leave policies. F, fringe benefits. G, financial support for training. H, employer-sponsored activities, including social or recreational programs. Okay, now we are on to part C, notice. And this is sort of how well does your organization give notice of its accessibility. The first question, I don't have any more slides to show, so I'm just going to keep going on in a PDF document for this particular subsection. And this is the last one for section 2, and then we're taking a few questions and then a break. C, notice. Number 1, are your organization's administration and board of directors aware of 504 and its possible impact on programs and activities? 2, has your organization made public notice in print, audio, and visual media that its programs or activities do not discriminate on the basis of disability in admission, access, or employment? And this is, that first key requirement about not discriminating and having a non-discrimination clause in different forms of media that interface with the public, with employees, employee benefit agreements, employment agencies, organizations representing disabled people, collective bargaining organizations, professional associations. 3, is the above notice in recruit materials or publications which contain general information about your organization? 4, do you emphasize that your programs and activities are accessible to disabled visitors in your advertisements, press releases, newsletters, and other publications? 5, do you advertise your programs and activities in multiple media so that visually, speech, or hearing impaired people can learn of your program independently? And that concludes section 2. So I'm going to take some questions, if there are any, about section 1 and section 2. And then we will have a little bit of a break, depending how much time we have left.
Hi, can we just jump in with questions?
Yes.
So I was wondering, in the section in which it asked about our state agencies and whether they have disabled individuals on their advisory committee, how would we know the answer to that? And if you happen to know, could you share with us, please?
That's section 2, question which one?
Number 4. It's the second part of question 4.
I thought that question was referring to your organization's advisory body, because it says does your advisory body, not their advisory body.
It says your state agency. It does say your state agency. It says
at the top. Yeah, that's
does your state or local arts commission agency. So that's,
I would put no, because as I'm currently aware, Arizona Commission doesn't have an advisory body. So just answer that one no.
So,
Next question.
the question I have is if you don't have any paid employees and you don't currently have any job openings, do you just leave them blank or do you check them no?
I think you're just supposed to check them no, because that might change in the future, you know?
When they refer to an employee, does that only refer to somebody on, does that only refer to somebody on payroll, or does that refer to contracted workers?
I think Gabriela answered that question.
Yeah, it has to be someone who's on payroll, who's on your payroll. Folks who are folks who do work for you, like maybe artists do workshops, or if you have seasons where then you hire folks out. This is for IRS purposes. They'll receive different type of documentation to file their taxes, so their income will be different. Those are considered contractors, paid contractors, so they're not technically staff.
Okay, so if you're a 1099, this does not apply.
Correct. And we also recognize that, there's a wide diversity in the grantee pool for this program. Your organization may have no paid staff. So we recognize that as well. And yeah, so the answer would be no. And then if you feel like you need to explain, you can make a note in your notes document that just say, like not applicable. Our organization has no one on staff, or just one staff person, like maybe you or someone part-time or otherwise.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I have one question up in the first section.
Mhm.
Let's see, it had to do with, does your organization receive any funds from other federal agencies or state art agencies? I think I'm clear about Arizona Commission on the Arts, but did you say we should also list the Arts Foundation here?
Yeah, that
Okay.
we fall under C, question C. Everyone would select yes, because you're receiving,
Oh, under C, got it.
you're
Okay.
selecting, you're receiving federal funds through us. And then in your notes document, you're going to list the particular projects that you have that are being funded by this ARPA grant money.
And
So you don't have to list all your projects, just the ones that you were planning to fund with this pool of money.
So that only is applying to this funding cycle. It's not from
Yes,
back. Is that
I believe so.
Okay.
But if we answered yes to question A, we skip B and C, right?
Yeah, you can skip the answer, but I would just answer it too, because it's
That was another question I had. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we recognize that this is a lot of information and a lot of labor, right? That you're going to have to expend putting, all of this info together. I would recommend, as Alex suggested, let's start with fiscal years 23 and fiscal year 22. Your document, the notes, all of that information will grow, right? As you build on it, but to make it, a little bit more manageable to start, just fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. We know some of you are in a calendar year, fiscal year. So your year starts January 1st and ends December 31st. And, for some of you, the fiscal year straddles 2 calendar years. The Arts Foundation's fiscal year starts on July 1st and ends June 30th. So we are actually in the middle of our fiscal year 23. So just use the dates that you provided in your submittable application to guide your dates.
Thanks, Gabriela. Any other questions?
So to answer that question, the section 1, question C, that the answer is yes for all of us because we're getting funding from y'all. How much detail is required of that answer? Like list any projects that are supported with this agency's funds. Like what do we say?
Just the name of your project.
Okay, cool.
And that's it. Should be good.
One more question. The notes page, the self-evaluation notes, are we handing that in as well? Or that's just for us? The Word document?
Adding them both in. Two documents. The workable PDF and
Right.
then the notes document, which is probably a docx file.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, will there be like a review period of us when we turn this in, and if there's anything that you flag where we can, make adjustments?
No, this is entirely self-led and not incredibly like enforced. It's a requirement that you have it on file to show you did it. But no, there's no getting in trouble by us.
No,
But yeah,
you would go back and change or that.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
We won't
No,
fail
no.
you. We won't issue a grade.
No, it's your best effort at this. So it seems like we have time for a 7-minute break if there aren't any more questions. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for your patience and endurance as we finish this up. So I'm going to start up again. In section 3, program accessibility. Now there are 4 parts to this section. General program accessibility, integrated setting, program evaluation, and program modification. Now, it kind of came up in the Q&A, but for the rest of the questions, when it's asking about your programs, just limit your responses to the programs that are being funded by this particular pool of ARPA money. Because it's due to this funding that you are subject to 504 regulations. So just you can narrow sort of how you're answering these, and it'll make more sense as we go on. And this is a whole section is just a deep look at how accessibility plays out in your organization at these different levels. And general program accessibility is like, are your programs and activities when viewed in their entirety accessible to disabled people? Part B, integrated setting, is, are your programs and activities presented in the most integrated setting appropriate to the needs of disabled people? Part C is program evaluation, which is a comprehensive set of questions that helps you evaluate the accessibility of different arts programs. And Part D, program modification, it suggests ways that currently inaccessible programs or activities can be modified without extensive structural changes. So going on. Oops. The Design for Accessibility document is a great resource, chapters 5 and 6. sort of on programmatic accessibility in the various art forms. So I really recommend you look through it later on your own. Part A, general program accessibility. Some notes for this. There's many parts of this that asks about program accessibility and for you to answer additional questions. Any supplementary information, remember, should be put in the notes document, the Word document, that will also be turned in along with this workbook PDF. And one sort of backbone of programmatic accessibility is the client path analysis. And this is a walkthrough of the processes needed for a citizen to participate in a service you provide. For example, a musical production or like a workshop or an art class. There are two aspects to this analysis. Firstly, the analysis of the physical path traveled. Are there barriers to them even attending the program or accessing the service? Two, analysis of the administrative requirements of the service delivery, such as eligibility criteria and application procedures. So how hard is it to buy those tickets or sign up for the program or register, things like that. And keep sort of this in mind when you're creating future programming or updating your policies and procedures and practices. So we're going to go back to the workbook and open to page 14, which is page 15 of the PDF. All right. Get to page 14. Program section 3, program accessibility, subsection A, general program accessibility. So the question is, can a disabled person take part in any of the activities associated with the program, whether as a staff person, volunteer, performer, audience member, artist, visitor, client, or student? And then if the answer is yes, it wants you to answer more questions. Does the organization regularly advertise physical access to its events and services? 2, and that's like, ramps available for whatever, noting to people that there's an accessible element. 2, does the organization regularly advertise programmatic access to its events and services? 3, is there a fee or charge to attend or join the program? Explain. 4, is there a fee or charge to use the facilities? Explain. And these explanations will go in your notes document, and you'll probably have to do that later. 5, are there discounts available? What are the discount rates? What is the policy? Are there TTs? Those are text telephones. A TDD is a telecommunications device for the deaf, and a TTY is a teletype writer. And those are those phones that you can text on. But I believe, email has taken the place of a lot of this technology now. So if you happen to have a TT phone, how many staff are trained? 7, are there sign interpreted performances, tours, exhibits, events? How often are they offered? Is there an interpreter available at all times? Is there an interpreter available upon request? 10, is spoken material available in print? For example, if there's a performance with a script, is that script available for someone to read? 11, are there assistive listening devices? 12, Are there audio narrated performances, tours, exhibits, events? How often are they offered? 13. Are audiovisual materials audio narrated? 14. Are audiovisual materials captioned? 15. Is printed material available in large print? 16. Is printed material available on audio cassette tape? 17. Is printed material available in Braille? 18. Does the organization have materials for communicating with learning impaired or developmentally disabled people? And that would be things like more simplified versions of texts that include pictures and pictographs rather than lots of text to read for a learning impaired person. And that concludes the first subsection. Now we are at integrated setting. Now I don't have any more slides to show you for integrated setting, so we're just going to keep going in the PDF, and at the end of section 3, we'll take questions. First question in program accessibility. Are programs and activities presented in the, this is subsection B, integrated setting. I don't know why it's at the bottom of the previous page. Okay, number 1, are programs and activities presented in the most integrated setting appropriate to the needs of disabled people? That is, do disabled people have the same opportunity to participate as non-disabled? And are programs and activities designed to include both disabled and non-disabled people? If yes, you would list programs and activities in which disabled people participate in an integrated setting in your notes document. 2, do you currently sponsor programs or activities specifically for disabled people? If yes, list those types of programs in your notes document. 3, are disabled people free to choose whether they participate in the special program or in the regular program? And that's the end of subsection B, integrated setting. And now we are in program accessibility. Program evaluation, part C. And I have some things I'm going to show you, so I'm going to go back to my slides. Program evaluation. So program evaluation is a very detailed look at your programmatic accessibility. There are 4 impairments that are covered in this section, and each impairment has a series of questions that asks if a mobility or visual or hearing impaired person can participate in your programs or activities. And so the 4 categories that are covered in this next section are mobility impairment, visual impairment, hearing impairment, and learning impairment. And it's going to ask a bunch of questions about your program accessibility for hearing impaired people, and then it's going to ask about the types of arts programming that you have available, and if each type, what types are accessible to a hearing impaired person. So only answer if the type of arts programming is applicable to your organization. So the categories are visual art, performing art, literary arts, media arts, and design arts. And then it's going to ask question facilities. And the definition going forward is for your type of program, include those architectural features or spaces that are particularly associated with the program, such as galleries, stages, or studios. So the facility where that type of program is happening, is it accessible? And you'll get the cadence as we go through the workbook. And once again, just think about the programs that are being specifically funded by this ARPA pool of money in the fiscal year that you submitted for your application. It also asks if the activities and or if there's products of the program, if they're usable by the person with that particular impairment. And these are just some of the following slides are just a few examples of accommodations you can offer the various impairments. So these are for blind or low vision, tactile materials, large print, recorded information. For hearing or speech disabilities, captioning, sign language, telephone amplifiers. For cognitive disabilities, quiet zones, or illustrations and pictographs for signs and information. So now we're going to open the workbook to page 17. Program evaluations. Number 1. And so the first section, all these questions are referring to a mobility impaired person. So can a mobility impaired person participate in your programs and or activities as a staff person, performer, audience member, visitor, or volunteer? And then can they participate in the program in your visual art program? Can they participate in your formal program, in your literary program? Most organizations will probably mainly have just one of these types of programming, but for the larger ones, you might have several types of programming, both media arts and visual arts. So answer when it's applicable. And leave the rest blank if they're not applicable. Is the facility accessible? So is the facility where the visual arts program is happening, is that accessible? Is the facility where the performing arts program accessible? Is the facility where the literary arts program is happening accessible? Is the facility where the media arts program is happening, is that accessible? So that's what that question means. Are the activities of the program accessible? So are the visual art activities of the program accessible? Are the performing arts activities of that program accessible? And only answer if it makes sense for the program that you offer. I doubt any one organization offers all of these things. C, are the products of the program usable by mobility impaired people? So if the program has a product, you'd answer this question. That might not be the case. Now we're on to number 2, and this is about visual impairment. So can a visually impaired person participate in your programs and or activities as a staff person, performer, audience member, visitor, or volunteer? Can a visually impaired person participate in your visual art program, in your performing art program, in your literary art program, in your media arts program, in your design arts program? Only select which ones make sense. A, is the facility accessible? So is the facility where the visual arts programming happening accessible to a visually impaired person? As in, would there be Braille signs that get that person to, that facility? Is it accessible is the performing arts facility accessible? Literary arts, the media arts, design arts. We have 2 more impairments that will go through the exact same questions. Are the activities of the program accessible? So are the activities, the visual art activities accessible, the performing arts activities, the literary arts activities, the media arts activities, or the design arts activities? Are they accessible to a visually impaired person? And are the products of the program usable by visually impaired people? Okay, number 3, this is for hearing impairment. Can a hearing impaired person participate in your programs and your activities as a staff person, audience member, visitor, or volunteer? Can a hearing impaired person participate in your visual art program, in your performing art program, in your literary art program, in your media arts program, or in your design arts program? Is the facility accessible to a hearing impaired person for your visual arts program, your performing arts program, literary arts, media arts, design art? And then are activities of the program accessible to hearing impaired people for the visual arts program, for the performing arts program, for the literary arts program, for the media arts program, for the design arts program? And are the products of the program usable by hearing impaired people for each of these types of artistic programming? Visual, performing, literary, media, and design. So hopefully you understand the cadence by now. This is the last one. Can a learning impaired person participate in your programs and or activities as a staff person, performer, audience member, visitor, or volunteer? So can that learning impaired person participate in your visual arts program, performing arts, literary arts, media arts, or design arts? Is the facility accessible to the learning impaired person for visual arts? And so for like learning impairment, having pictographs of like a restroom for signage is a way to make something accessible to say a learning impaired person. Is the facility accessible where the performing arts is happening, the literary arts, the media arts, design arts? And are the activities of the program accessible to a learning impaired person? Are the activities of the visual arts program accessible? The performing arts activities, literary arts activities, media arts activities, design arts activities? And are the products of the program usable by people with learning disabilities? And then products of the visual, performing, literary, media, or design arts. Woo! We just finished subsection C. Now, I don't have any more slides for program modification, so I'm just going to go into the, keep going with the PDF. And it says that the following questions suggest ways that currently inaccessible programs and activities can be modified without extensive structural changes. But really, the questions are just questions. And then if you answer no, the suggestion is what the question was asking you if you had. Number 1, have you relocated or rescheduled any programs and or activities to an existing accessible facility to make them available to disabled people? If you did, list programs and locations. And then this is another part I forgot to highlight. Can you locate a facility that is accessible or modify one to be accessible? It's kind of an open question. Number 2, have you provided auxiliary aids such as TTs, those text telephones I described, audio tapes, or sign language interpreters to make your programs and your activities available to people with communication impairments? If yes, specify which in your notes document. 3, have you provided adequate communications by presenting all written and spoken materials in other ways, such as by interpreter in printed form, in video, on audio tape, or in large print? 4, have you held awareness training sessions or otherwise sensitized your frontline staff docents, guards, ushers, receptionists, or box office staff to the needs of disabled people? If yes, how and when? 5, do you have disabled people serving as advisors for program planning? And that's it. We just finished section 3. Excellent. So now it's time for questions.
Alex,
Mhm.
I just want to be sure so that we're narrowed in on this. It's just for the programs that were funded through this grant. It's not the organization as a whole.
In this particular section, when it's asking about programs, think specifically about the programs that are being funded by this grant. In the prior sections, sort of the administrative and employment sections do apply to your whole organization. But for these programmatic questions,
Just
and
what's
anytime,
funded. And then we were funded for the Morley Arts District, which is a lot of different venues, but I'll just add the best that I can because most of those should be. Anyway, okay, thank you.
yeah, just the best
Yep.
you can do
Okay, thanks.
with your resources, Just jump in if you have a question.
Just kind of unclear in terms of, so we're, a ballet program. We do have all people in our performances, but they're student-based mostly. So we have wheelchair students. In terms of the audience, I don't know what the theater has when we go into it. So I don't always know whether they have listening devices. I don't know if they have Braille signs. I haven't actually noticed, but I'm assuming they do because, of the regulations in Tucson for theaters.
Yeah, and it's okay, that you don't know, and I think that's part of this whole journey is like just straight up awareness and of knowing these things are like considered as part of section 504 regulations, and then
I mean, like
you just
printing
do your best to answer.
Braille, I don't even know if our printer has that ability. The program, I don't.
Yeah, so it's okay if you just answer no, because it's just what it is. So you don't have to like be worried or anything about it,
That would go on the notes section to say, I don't know if the printer has availability to print in Braille, something like that.
Yeah, well, there's some directives that have like that you should write out, like you should have like a plan. I think that was in the beginning. So you can always just say like currently not sure if Braille is an option,
Okay.
It can be that simple. Don't make, big, you don't have to make big promises or anything. It's just, this is an assessment. It's just like where you're at now.
Alex, I just had one more quick question. If, for instance, in a discipline, like there's no literary arts as part of the program, do we just leave it blank?
Yeah, just leave those blank.
Okay, thanks.
So all those programmatic discipline questions, if it doesn't apply, you just leave it blank. Any other questions on this section? We'll proceed to the last section. Then see here. So our last section, let me go back to my slides. Is architectural accessibility. And it really only has one part, which is existing facilities. This applies to everyone, even if you're renting. it's a very detailed section that will really have to be done outside of this webinar. And as far as the workbook says, not all buildings and facilities need to be accessible, but those that house accessible programs and activities must meet minimum requirements for accessibility. So this is just thinking about the facilities that house your programs. And it's a very detailed section about your existing facilities. And then many questions will need to be revisited in your notes document because they will require measurements and require supplemental information you might not have at hand. And to narrow sort of what you guys are answering, once again, just focus on the programs that are specifically being funded. So if you knew, if you have a class that was funded by our grant, and think about the building that class was housed in, that facility that program was in. And you might not have these answers right now. So most of this will have to be done later. There are two parts to architectural accessibility: general building accessibility and architectural elements. For general building accessibility, this includes getting into and out of and moving around in a building, finding and using restrooms and other facilities. The other part is architectural elements, which are elements unique to arts programs, activities such as galleries or stages. Evaluation questions for this category, they were already in program accessibility section of this work. All right. Apologies, you might hear some noises in the background. Okay, I'm going to go over a definition here of accessible route. An accessible route is a continuous pathway with a stable, firm, and slip-resistant surface at least 36 inches wide, which has no curbs, steps, stairs, or abrupt changes in level greater than a quarter inch. It should be free from sand, gravel, gratings, debris, or anything that could trip people or result in an unstable or uneven surface. Another part of an accessible route is that it provides a safe and usable path for people who walk with difficulty, use wheelchairs, crutches, braces, canes, or walkers, or who have respiratory or heart problems, other conditions that limit stamina or mobility. Accessible routes are also safer and easier for everyone to follow. Think about people with strollers. I notice accessibility stuff once I started using a stroller. Let's see here. Now we're going to open the workbook and start on the architecture accessibility on page 24. And so this section is very detailed. We're going to be skimming over, well, not skimming, but I'm going to be going through the questions because you're going to have to answer them on your own using the notes document as your supplement, when directed by the question. And then we'll have a last round of questions at the end and should be done on time. Okay. I'm going to share back to the workbook. And thank you everyone for your patience and your time. I know this is dense, but hopefully illuminating. Page 24. Section 4, Architectural Accessibility. So we're going down to the only section, which is existing facilities. And the first question is about accessible routes, which we went over. Is there an accessible route connecting the building entrance to accessible parking spaces, off-site parking, passenger loading zones, public sidewalks, public transportation stops? Does each accessible route meet the following requirements? And so those are the requirements I went over. Question 2 is about parking. Are accessible parking spaces provided? Are they connected by an accessible route? How many spaces and what are the measurements? Is off-site accessible parking provided? Are passenger loading zones provided? Are they connected by an accessible route? Question 3 is about entrances and doors. Does the building have a primary entrance that is accessible? So it asks about your entrance measurements and what type of entrance, if it's a swing door or revolving door, and about if there's enough space. And question 4 is interior circulation. Do halls and corridors meet the requirements for an interior accessible route? And then it has some requirements for what an interior spaces should be like. Question 5 is about vertical circulation. So this really might not apply to many people who don't have multiple stories. So it's asking about if your building is one level, are there ramps or elevators? And then specifics about the call buttons to the elevators. And number 6, water fountains. Is at least one water fountain provided that is usable by disabled people? And number 7 is restrooms. Is at least one accessible restroom provided? And then it wants to know the measurements for all the aspects of that restroom, of that said accessible restroom. Number 8, telephones. Is at least one telephone provided that is usable by disabled people? Number 9 is about signage. Are signs clear and readable with large letters that contrast the background? 10, clear floor space and work surfaces. So this is about like being able to move around the interior space. So measuring clear floor space. And then if people can get up underneath objects. 11 is reach ranges. Are all controls and hardware mounted low enough to be within easy reach of diminutive size or seated people, like light switches, air conditioning controls, audio equipment controls? And just to note, all these page numbers are pages in designed for accessibility, in which there's actually pictographs of sort of what they're talking about. 12, controls and hardware. Are controls and hardware easily operated? 13, warning signals. Do emergency warning systems produce both audible and visible signals? 14, new construction. Do new buildings and facilities meet the requirements of uniform federal accessibility standards? 15, theater, concert halls, auditoriums. Are there existing wheelchair locations integrated throughout? And are there accessible routes leading to the wheelchair location? And if these questions don't apply to your organization, just leave them blank, because yeah, that doesn't apply. There's no need to answer yes or no on those things, because you might not be a performing arts organizations. So theater, concert halls, and auditoriums is not applicable. And so that is the end of the workbook. We just got through the last section. So thank you all. Let's go to questions.
So when they say where are the entrances located, what exactly, how much are there accessible roads leading to wheelchair locations? I don't know what they're asking. I'm saying, is there a ramp? Do they want a street number? What are they asking?
Can you tell me what number question that is?
Number, I think it's number, let me go, hold on a second. Number 15 in B, are there accessible routes leading to the wheelchair locations? And so, yes, I know there are, but I don't know, like, do I write the north side of the building? By how specific do they want? And for the theater. This is Temple of Music and Art.
Oh, I guess it would be, I'm assuming they're asking, are they like located like in front of the stage or like inside the theater or like, I think that's what I'm assuming.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's asking about theater, concert halls, auditoriums. So you could just
Right.
say like middle of front of stage or stage left or stage right. I don't know actually anything about stage directions. Wherever, or it would be just like a broad description of where in the facility the, I mean, because if they're on the balcony, up on the balcony, that's where they are, that's where they are. And then you put that's where they are.
For situations with space rentals, for individual events, especially like for the period in question, we were at Steinfeld Warehouse, and this year we're someplace. Like, I'm not going back to Steinfeld with the tape measure and measuring stuff, right? So we're just going to do our best estimates for stuff like that from memory, right? I mean,
Yeah, you're just completing this to the best of your ability right now.
Thank you.
Also, what about when there's multiple venues? I'm not sure how to answer that because there's so many different venues.
In your particular instance, multiple venues were a part of the funding.
The Morley Arts District, yeah, there's quite a few different venues. So and then we're also getting utilities for our building, so that throws in another facility. So I'm like, oh, I'm not sure which facilities to answer for.
Paula, what are you requesting funding reimbursement for?
Artist contract fees for the Morley Arts District for 50%, and then 50% for utilities for our nonprofit owned building.
Why don't you, okay, let's see. How many artists is the grant funding?
Just one.
Oh, and that artist did work across several venues?
Yes, in the Morley Arts District.
Okay. I would say, I mean, pick one or two.
Pick a venue and
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
there was a main performance venue that we could use in that district. And then for utilities for our building, the public doesn't come in. I'm not sure if we should be including that. So maybe
I mean, it is also meant to include like your staff. The first sections were
Right.
about your own kind of employment and stuff. I mean, do your best. Maybe maybe do your building and do like the main or one of the main venues that you
down. Okay.
Yeah, and start
Okay,
there.
thank you.
Mhm.
So for measurements for doors, can we answer things like, we do have wheelchair performers. Can we just say large enough for wheelchair performers to go through? Is that acceptable rather than having to have the exact measurements?
We're not grading you. We're not gonna send your form back and say, you know what, you answered this wrong. You gotta go fix it. I would say, again, we understand you are all receiving, I think it's up to $10,000. There's only one grantee who only requested $5,000. we recognize that you are all doing a lot of amazing work in the community, and we want to support you. We don't want, the reason why we are scheduling this webinar is to try and support you in, you know, in meeting this requirement. We are not trying, I just want to, let me turn my screen on so you can see my face. We are not trying to create more work for you. We know that you are already doing amazing work. We don't want to divert your capacity to paperwork. I would say, as we've been saying, you know, we're trying to make this process as user-friendly for all of you. So I would say answer to the best of your ability, but don't you know, don't spend a week answering all of this. Do your best, answer truthfully. This is, as Alex mentioned, it's a process of kind of, you know, it's sort of getting us started on the process of thinking through some of these topics. Just do your best. And yeah, you can just say, you know, if you have, if there's, you know, that you are accommodating, for example, your performers, you can just click yes and make a note. And then just move on. Yeah. We're not, I promise you, we're not going to grade you. We're not going to send anything back. It's really sort of for you and your community and the folks that you work with. Yeah.
You know, for the person who said Steinfeld, the Steinfeld handicap bathroom was built to full ADA specs. So put some note that way.
That's great. Thanks, Jim. It's Tenny from POG. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay, great.
Hey, Jim.
Can I ask a question about parking spaces?
Go for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to find it in the document. I know I can find it. Off-site parking. I'm not sure, like, we have on-site parking, and so there's parking in the town. I would just say yes, because there's parking lots by us, including our own private parking.
I guess so. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
that's a strange question, off-site park. I guess that maybe, yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, I thought.
Yeah, I'll
sure.
just say yes to both. Thanks.
Yeah. Path of least resistance.
Yes.
And Lori just made a really good comment in the chat. You know, she just put in the comment, you know, this is meant to be a living document as a guide to the future to be aware of community needs. I couldn't have said it better. Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just thought it took a lot of stress off of me when I kind of thought that way. I wanted other people to think of it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie.
Yeah.
Yeah, if just like one thing different happens in the next like year, you know, that might make a difference for one of your participants, you know, noticing just that like there's no clear signage anywhere in your building to a restroom. You know, that's like a very basic, like sort of like accessibility change that can happen with like low impact on the organization. So these are all just like ideas to keep in mind as you operate within your spaces and operate your programs. And like I said, I highly recommend looking through the Design for Accessibility document. There's a lot of really great quotes from disabled artists, you know, who talk about wanting to be included and just like ideas. It's cool. It's cool, very dated, but cool.
Cassette tapes.
Yeah. Yes.
I think just even, you know, some of the venues we work with I know they're really compliant, and just even publishing that the facilities are available, you know, I mean, that's just a no-brainer right away. Like, put it on your flyers and your promotional material. It's great. This is very helpful.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Helpful, not painful.
Maybe it's both.
Yeah.
So now,
And
if we-
also just for reference, the the workbook says in the beginning that it should take 4 hours. So you've already done 2 hours of that. Don't go past that. That's what they envisioned when they made this document, this workbook.
If we've been working from the hyperlink version and we do save as, are we going to be able to come back to it to fill in all the questions? Or
Yes.
once we've, okay.
We had some folks, Alex, who kind of were joining, as the meeting progressed. Would you mind sort of doing a save as to show folks how to save so that they don't lose their work, and then how to reopen it really quickly?
Ah, good idea.
Yeah, so I'm in Google Chrome, but it'll probably be similar for Edge or Safari. When I click, so I can answer things here. I click the download and it'll save, ask me if I want to download with my changes, and I'll click with my changes. And then I'm going to save it as Section 504 workbook for webinar. Oh, sorry, that's what I'm calling mine. But you're going to save it as 504 self-evaluation notes and the name of your organization. And it's a PDF. And so you would save it. I'm just going to put test. And then you would go to your where you saved it. So I saved mine on my desktop. And then when you open it back up, oopsies. So I would right click it because it'll ask how you want to open it. If you don't have Acrobat Reader, you're going to have to choose where to open it. So open it with whatever browser you use. So I'm going to open mine in Google Chrome. And then it'll open it back up with, if I go back to the last page, sorry. It opened it back up to, I opened in my browser again, and it will have saved the things that I had put in there. So hopefully that makes it. Are there any other questions about the workbook?
If we have questions about submitting documentation for costs, should we just reach out and email you?
I have just shared the slide with who you should direct questions to. For the Section 504 things, email me.
Okay. All right.
Alex at artsfoundtucson.org. And for any of the meteor things, Gabriela is going to be your person.
Could you throw that in the chat, please, also, so that it's copyable?
Sure.
Thank you.
What about if you have not been contacted by someone to get the bank.com? Who do we talk to, Gabriella or Alex?
Yeah, that's the bill.com information is gonna come from Momentum Tax. They will send you that information. We have to work through your proof of payment first. And then they'll send you an email, and the process will kick off from there. Yeah.
The proof of payment on our form section of submittable, is that where we're looking
Yes.
for that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I sneak in another question about that, about the proof form on submittable?
Yeah, is everybody, are there any other questions on the information that Alex just shared? And then
Right.
I'll make myself available to answer any other questions, but let's maybe
Okay.
close.
Yeah, we're recording this 504 webinar for future
Okay,
use on section 504. So if
maybe.
there are no more questions, we'll close out that part of the presentation. Thank you, everybody.